Hello, welcome to another SonicLAB. Today we're looking at the ioStation from Presonus. ioStation 24c, I might add, because this is a little bit different to just a FaderPort, because essentially we're looking at something that is like a FaderPort Mark II, which was just a sort of single channel MIDI controller like this, but this has got a 2-channel audio interface built into it as well. So it's a kind of combined desktop DAW control plus 2 mic or line inputs and 2 outputs plus headphone outputs. Now it's using the X-Max preamps, or the X-Max, so they're Class A, they're their sort of top draw mic preamps that they put in their higher end audio interfaces. We've also got moving fader, we've got control surface, we've got the controls for the audio I/O here, and it's basically fairly simple. With just 2 I/O, it doesn't really offer masses of connectivity. There's no MIDI involved either, although the control surface itself does operate as a MIDI controller. So the original FaderPort and the FaderPort Mark II, very popular devices because they're very small and compact, but they give all the functionality across one channel at least of the MCU and the Huey protocol. In fact, if we look here, as well as the automation and the moving fader and the scroll wheel, we've also got transport control, which means we can control the DAW as we see fit from this. In fact, there are modes for Ableton Live, Apple Logic, Avid Pro Tools, Moto Digital Performer, Presonus Studio One, Steinberg Cubase, with various different flavours of MCU and Huey. And these, when you power up, you press the re button and then you just boot it into the different modes, which are various configurations of these buttons. Now, I've got it set up with Studio One, which is on the screen here. Studio One version 5, which we've done something on in the past. This is their Presonus' own DAW, and that actually unlocks more features, because what you get with this are some very specific features in the controller. Things like link capability. So using link mode, let's say I open the EQ, hold my mouse over it, press link, and now the knob will control whatever my active parameter is under the mouse. We've seen this before in Cubase. I think they did it with some of their controllers. It's actually a really useful feature, and then we can also lock that if we want, so that it will just continue to control whatever we're doing with the mouse. This is all really handy, and as a Studio One user, you'll be thinking, great, this is all stuff that I can use. However, it's not all roses. Obviously, this is designed really to get the most out of Studio One. Even though it works in Huey mode for various and Mackie Control mode for various DAWs. In some of those modes, you get different buttons that perhaps don't do what you would need to, like there's no master, maybe the click doesn't work, whatever. It depends on which mode you're in. However, if you really wanted to get under the hood, there is a MIDI mode which you can get to by pressing solo on the boot up sequence, power up, hit the next button, and then the solo sequence. And then if you follow the guide, it gives you the information you need to be able to actually control the LEDs, control the button behavior, and read and write from the MIDI to that. So if you want to get into that, you really can, but you do need to be a bit more have a bit more in-depth knowledge. However, it's really, to get the most out of it, it really works best with Studio One. Okay, so let's take a listen to the mic preamps. I've got this trusty Studio Electronics ribbon mic coming into input 1 as combi jack. We can switch phantom power on. I don't want to do that, obviously, because it seems to be global for both rather than on individual channels. One thing to watch out for. That's coming into here. Then if I go to my Studio One screen, I can now arm that track. 1 2 1 2, which you should be hearing just the input. Now we've got, on many audio interfaces, we can listen to the input and we can also listen to the output. The other thing that we can do is we can mute the main outs so that we would only be able to listen on headphones, but you won't be hearing anything, so I'll leave that on now. So we'll switch over to the output. The latency on this is actually quite low. It's 2 milliseconds at 44.1. I could change this all the way up. This interface will go up to 192K. And I believe it records 64-bit float, which is obviously great, but maybe not for some mics. So it would be some big disk space. So let me just put my headphones on so I can hear. Decent headphone level, that's good. 1 2 1 2 1 2. Now if I go back here, you'll notice that I've got this little bypass button, because there's a whole load of preset plugins running across the input, which I pulled in from the browser over here. So now if I unbypass that, now we've got a different sort of the process sound, which is a bit more kind of, well, you know, it's a bit more radio, isn't it? And once again, you know, we can set the gain level here until we have it more or less where we want. Let's just bypass those again. Bypass, yeah. It's introducing a bit of noise, but we've got quite a lot of EQ happening on these channels, so that's going to be bringing it, and we've got a lot of gain, but I've still got a bit more headroom. I could go too far, that's a bit too much, but so it's not bad. Let's bypass that now and go back to this. So switching back to my mic, ribbon mics often challenge a audio interface just because of the impedance and also because they need a lot of gain. They are very natural sounding, very unflattering. I've sort of hyped that to sort of maybe match my lav mic here, which is a bit more radio. So the other thing that we should test is the tambourine test. Now, tambourine test is quite important because what that essentially means is that it tests how the mic preamps can handle transients. Tambourines generate an enormous amount of high frequency content that will tax a low quality mic preamp. Generally what happens is if you don't have good quality mic preamps, it sounds like sort of scrunchy and kind of slightly, it just sounds wrong. So let's try that with the tambourine. I'll probably need, if I arm this, I'm going to need to drop the level down because the transients are so high. So let me just put my headphones back on again and we'll probably just record a bit. Let's just go. Okay, so let's play that back. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the original file onto the timeline here because otherwise you'll be hearing this coming through another couple of conversion processes. So let's just listen. So I'm just going to record that. Yeah, I mean, coming straight out of the interface back from what I just recorded, that sounds pretty good. It may not translate because as all these transients, as they go through the various different processes, by the time it gets to the YouTube compression, it might not do it justice. But take it from me, it does actually sound pretty good straight out of the DAW. So I think it's passed that test. A couple of things. Would have liked to have seen maybe some more mic preamp features, like maybe a phase reverse or a high pass filter, so that we could roll off 80 hertz or whatever. It is fairly basic. I mean, even though the sound quality of these mic preamps is good, you know, there's not much to do. You know, there's not much we could do apart from add gain and switch phantom power on and off. Another thing we should mention, we've also got to have mains power into this because this is running the fader and the lights. USB-C is generally, can provide more power, but I'm pretty sure you need it with this system to be able to run everything. Another thing I should point out is very often if I'm using a USB audio interface that's not USB-C, because I'm taking the screen out to this and this is going via HDMI into my capture system, we get these ground loops with regular USB. I'm not getting that at all with this, which is actually quite encouraging. Usually we have to figure out another way around, but this is very clean. That's what I'm trying to point out. So there's definitely, it seems better than just a regular USB connection. The USB just seems like a much cleaner. I think the grounding maybe is sorted out. I'd have to look that up, but from my ears, I can judge that it does. Few more things that we've got here. The latency was pretty good. I think that's actually quite impressive. I mean, I don't know what it would be like with multiple inputs, but as this has only got two, that's not really an issue. So let's also have a listen to input one, the instrument input, because I've got an instrument here that I want to try out as well. Right, so I've got my trusty 1970s Fender Music Master bass here, which is, it's not very good to be honest, but if it can sound okay in this, then I'm feeling positive. So we'll go back to the input. Let me just put my headphones on as well. And I'll arm this. Probably a wee bit too much. Turn my monitors off. Now, again, what I've got here, if I double click, I've got a sort of an amp running on this, so I can bypass that. It's just as what it sounds like straight in. I think I up getting a little bit of interference from my screen, but that sounds pretty good to me. I've got that's probably a little bit hot, got a bit of drive in that amp. So now if I just press play, maybe record a bit of this. Okay. Now you'll have to excuse my bass playing. I'm not really a bass player, but it sounded good. This has sort of got quite a deep sound. It feels like the instrument level works, so you could plug a mic into it, you can plug an instrument into it, you can plug line level synths as well. So it's quite versatile in that sense. I mean, you'd expect that really from any interface if it couldn't take at least those. So from my point of view, this definitely seems to have all that you need in terms of, you know, a simple desktop interface. The mic preamps sound good. It goes right up into audio rates. The fact that it's USB-C certainly helps with the noise and the interference and ground looping potential. The only downside I would say is the lack of MIDI I/O on this and the fact that there aren't these additional features on the mic preamp such as high pass filter and phase reverse, etc. But having said that, this doesn't cost all that much more than a FaderPort Mark II. FaderPort Mark II goes for around 160 quid. This goes around 260, 265. So for 100 quid, you're getting a 2-channel audio interface with X-Max preamps, Class A preamps. In the US, it's actually only 80 bucks more, so even better value. So before I play out with a little bit of extra noodling, I want to say thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time on SonicLAB. Bye-bye now.